Alright, what up, everybody? We're gonna wait before we start answering questions because we're going live like now. So, one sec. Alright, I know it was quiet for a bit, but I wanted to see like if we could get anybody in the chat. Now, I was trying to like get people to, I think it was to like follow my, I don't remember what it was for. Actually, like I'm thinking about it now. And I like tried to, I forget, I think I was like trying to get to I don't want to say I was trying to get to a follower account. I think I was trying to get to a follower account for the YouTube, maybe? I don't know. I was trying to get to account for something. And I was like, alright, for every person that does blank, I'll follow. What's the YouTube at now? I think it's at 176, so it's high enough that I can have a custom URL, but it's not high enough for me to get like any of the other benefits. Starting soon, so I have a huge problem, and I guess I'll talk about this now. So after I do this fundraising streams for October for Trans Lifeline, I had originally planned to like keep this schedule as my actual stream schedule. So I have a bit of a problem. I have to get major dental work done because a bunch of things. So I was like homeless for a bit. I have depression. So one of the first things that like goes in my like self-care is my dental hygiene. And this has led to me having some pretty having gingivitis and some pretty messed up teeth. And unfortunately, I've already come to terms with this to an extent, but I'm going to be losing some teeth. I have to get them extracted, and then I'll be getting a partial denture, probably for almost my entire like front teeth for my bottom jaw. And what wasn't explained to me when they first told me about it, that they explained to me when I was at the dentist yesterday, and this kind of led to me having the panic attack while they were doing work, is that when they take out these teeth, I'm probably gonna not have any teeth in that area for at least 2 to 3 weeks before I get my denture. And so I'm surprise, surprise, I'm a fairly vain person, so I'm mentally struggling a bit with the idea of not having teeth, like having a pretty noticeable gap in my mouth. And then also, I don't know how comfortable I'll be and how articulate I'll sound while missing those teeth, because it's, the front of my mouth, your tongue touches your front teeth when you talk. So I just don't know what that's gonna be like. Thanks, cute Vermouth. I appreciate that. So yeah, so this is a very long-winded way of me saying that like there was an original plan to like really push a lot more video content, but there's like a pretty high chance that like I'm not gonna have teeth for all of January. Not my entire mouth, but in ways that will affect my ability to speak and frankly affect my desire to want to be on camera. This is why I haven't done it. This is why I can't do it sooner, right? Because I still have Red Bull Conquest next month. I'm going to be in Seattle, and then potentially they're going to have me at the finals. And then I honestly don't want to spend my birthday and Christmas without teeth, so I'm not getting it done in December. So the earliest I'll be getting that done is the beginning of January. Yeah, so I'm doing it during the esports off season. Also with Jinx Esports Television, as a lot of you may or may not know, is like one of the big places that I write for. And one of the things that they have told me, and it's kind of become pretty obvious with a lot of the programming that they do, that they're really going to be making like a huge push to be a part of the FGC. So what that means for me is that they want me to do more FGC content for them. I originally, when Jacob Hale announced that he was leaving, and one of the outlets that I write for isn't really super interested in doing fighting game content, unless it's local to them, which is in Toronto, I was going to announce at the end of this year that I was not going to be doing any formal esports content anymore. So what that would mean is that I would only be doing esports content for The Neutral, the Analyst Desk, which is my League of Legends show that will be starting again soon for Worlds, and then like that would be it. Like I would not be doing esports. They announced that a really good friend of mine, Aaron McManus, is going to be their consultant and editor. So I'm going to definitely be coming back to doing that type of content. So that's a pretty dope thing for me. To answer your question, Cheese, I mean, they're gonna knock me out when they take the teeth out because it's similar like when you get your wisdom teeth taken out. So my assumption is that it'll suck the first couple of days, and then it'll just be extremely awkward after that, right? Because I'll just be missing teeth and like, you know, so that'll be weird. And I know, guys, this is like probably not what you showed up for. You did not show up for me to like talk about my like dental woes, but here we are talking about my dental woes because it like leads into a lot of other stuff. Because it affects like what I'm going to be doing content wise come January. So come January, we might do streams, but I probably won't be on camera. Like I'm just going to be very frank. I have no interest on having any recorded footage of me missing teeth. That's just not going to happen. So I'll probably stream, and then depending on like my comfort with talking, I will at least talk during those streams. If not, you guys can just tune in and watch me play video games. But we won't be doing like AMA streams. I might do like journalism streams still, but what I might do is I might write the script and then have somebody come onto the stream and read the script, and like I'll help with all the editing and whatnot. Because I still want to like do information. But like I said, January is out of the question as far as like how some of my content goes. Anyway, so we have some questions from that previous AMA that we did like over the summer that I didn't fully get to. And then we have questions that people asked me when I asked them if they could ask a trans person anything, what would they ask? And then there's a few of you in chat. So if you want to ask me questions there, you are more than welcome to. One real quick thing, as I sort of already said, you all can see that, you should see, well, I'll just do this first so that you guys can see it again. I don't know if you all have seen it. So I'm raising money for Trans Lifeline. They're the only crisis line, trans-specific crisis line in North America. They service, and I shouldn't say North America because I don't know if they don't service Mexico, but they do service the United States and Canada. They have two specific phone lines. I think one of the phone lines will come up during the through Nightbot. I can quickly make a command for it, or I could ask somebody if you wouldn't mind looking up their numbers and putting them into the chat. That would be super helpful. But right now they're doing this charity stream thing called Trans Heart October. I should probably slow down the cooldown on Nightbot for the donation line. But we're trying to raise $250 because what they told me is that $25 connects one person to to Trans Lifeline. Like it connects them to the line. So I figured $250 would be dope because it would connect 25 people to the service. Personally, for me, they also do micro grants where they help trans people be able to afford their document changes. And I was one of the recipients, so I'm going to be able to change my documents, so I'll finally be legally Amanda Stevens come probably like mid-December. And that's because I was able to receive one of their micro grants. So like that's pretty big for me. So that's why when they had emailed saying that they were going to be doing Trans Hard October, and that they were hoping that people would be interested in streaming, I, of course, even though my really small viewership, right, I knew that doing this stream was going to be super important to me. And so that's why I'm streaming, even though I kind of hate streaming. But whatever. So we have some more people in the chat. What up, what up? So one thing, and you know, because this kind of came up the last time I streamed for on like Monday, is please don't donate to me. Please don't donate to me. Please donate to the donate link, which I'll share it one more time since we have new people. Please don't donate directly to me because I'm not a big enough streamer. So a lot of my money is stuck in Twitch jail because they pay out when you hit 100, and I'm not near $100. So please don't donate to my PayPal. Please just donate directly to the charity. That's my only request. Don't give me bits. Don't. I mean, if you want to sub. I'm not gonna stop you. But I'd rather if you had any inclination to sub, just give that $5 to them. It's super important to me that we raise this money. They're smashing it right now. I think they're trying to raise like 25,000, and I think we're at like 19,000. So we are smashing it already, and the month has just begun. But please, 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 don't send me any money this month. All of it go directly to the link. All right. So we have one question in the Twitch chat, which is, have you ever thought about doing commentary for League of Legends or for fighting games? And the answer to that is yes. When I first got into doing esports content, I had flirted with the idea of doing commentary because I felt that I was pretty knowledgeable about the game. I was pretty good at talking about the game and making logic leaps based on what was going on in the game. And I also knew a lot of commentators at the time. So I had considered it because I thought it was really cool. And the thing that sort of stopped me from wanting to do it is that I realized that I'm like not as like knowledgeable as I think, and not at like a very technical level that I think I would be adding to the conversation when I stream, when I commentate. When it comes to fighting games, my technical knowledge of fighting games is super low. I really enjoy them, and I enjoy watching them, and I enjoy talking about like the history of players, but my general understanding of fighting games is super low, and so I don't actually think I would be able to contribute much to that sort of commentary. I have talked a lot. If you guys saw the episode of The Neutral with Logan Sama, if you guys saw the Evo interview with Spooky, we did talk a lot about like, you know, bringing more people like me into the FGC, where like we do what I do now, right? Which is like interviews, the sort of analysis work that I do for Cheddar, of trying to add that style of broadcast to the FGC, you know, the analyst desk, the sideline reporter style. But the FGC, like, that's a huge financial burden, and it's just not something that we think is going to happen in the FGC anytime soon. So the super long-winded way of answering that question is, it's something that I've thought about at different points in my past, but currently I just don't see myself really being a commentator. Now, that doesn't mean that, like, if Albany started doing a fighting games, like, we do have a fighting game scene, but, like, I've just never been there for it. But, like, so I do think that if, like, the opportunity arose, right, like some charity event or something reached out to me and was like, hey, Amanda, we want you on the mic to do do commentary, I'd give it a shot, but I promise you it would not be that great. So that's just what it is. What advice would I give someone who's just starting out freelancing? I assume you mean just like in general in like esports, because I don't know a lot about freelancing in other industries. Don't do it. What I mean by that is freelancing in esports is very difficult, and it's not very rewarding, and a lot of websites don't pay very well. So if you want to freelance in esports, by all means do it. Just know that the pay is not great. A lot of the websites aren't dope, and aren't dope about it. Some websites don't really treat you well, or they think they're treating you well, but they're really not. And know your worth, which contradicts the first point, right? Which is that you're probably not going to make a lot. Now, with all of that being said, if you're new to freelancing in esports, then some of the pay rates that exist are pretty decent for people who are new. So that means like, writing for places like The Dot or Dexerto, those sites pay an amount, and it's not bad if you're starting out. Same thing for Jinx Esports Television. If you're starting out, it's not a terrible place to start, especially now that Aaron McManus is the editor. And Dustin Steiner's a really great guy over at Dexerto for the U.S. content branch. And I don't know who's the editor-in-chief over at Dot anymore, because I know Siren Mueller went off to Genji as like their content lead. So I don't have a massive opinion about what goes on at Dot anymore. Now, outside of the financial aspect, one of the things I recommend, because, I have a lot of friends that come to me and they say, man, I really wish I wrote. Like, I wish I wrote content like you do. Do it. We talk about this a lot as content creators, and we try to explain this a lot to our fans, which is, if writing is something that you want to do, if making content is something that you want to do, the best way to start is to just start doing it. Generally what that means is like start having man, I'm doing a lot of bad things right now, but start with a blog, start with a Medium, Facebook notes, whatever it is. Start writing and just write and get people's feedback, put it out there. And maybe people are just going to ignore you, maybe people are going to tell you suck, and that is awful, but it's how you get better, right? When I talk to other content creators, I'm expecting really honest opinions, and sometimes I get really pissed about what's being said, even though I like getting critiqued. Sometimes I'm like, nah, you're wrong, man. This is this is not the take I want. Man, I can't figure out how to do my hair right now. Jesus Christ. That's even worse. But no, so sometimes I just have to accept that I shouldn't have started messing with it. Sometimes I just have to accept, bad, when something I'm doing is not great. So, in that vein, put your stuff out there so that it can be critiqued, whether it's putting it on Reddit, sending it to friends, sending it to people like me. Jacob Wolf tends to be pretty open about looking over people's stuff. Dustin Steiner, I don't know how busy he is now that he's at Dexerto and not just a staff writer at a website. I'm just gonna do this. Actually, we're gonna do this. So I don't know what his schedule is like. James Obscurica Chen is also pretty open to going over people's stuff. There's a lot of people out there who are pretty down about helping you become a better writer. So that's another thing. Hone your craft. You're not gonna be able to just start writing immediately and be able to be at a level where websites are gonna take your pitches. So that's my other big advice. Another thing is that if you're gonna become a freelance writer for a living, I really think that you need to pick up this book called The Elements of Style. It's it'll make you a better writer just by having that book and reading it and being all about it. Anybody who knows about The Elements of Style will tell you that book will instantly improve your level of writing skill. So, boom, done. That's freelancing. For me, it's the opposite of the technical knowledge for commentating Street Fighter. but I'm not articulate enough. Okay. So, Cute Venomoth, or Cute Vermoth. About that, this sort of falls into what we just talked about like how to become a freelancer and how to become a better writer. It's this idea that like you can't just not do it, right? You if you think that like you have the technical knowledge to be a commentator, then my biggest advice to you as someone who makes content, and I do this similar thing, right, is that do it more. Commentate. Sajam talks about this a lot. Tasty Steve brought it up in one of my interviews with him. Commentate over matches. Like, mute the CBT match and start commentating. And sure, solo commentating sucks. So that's going to probably be really rough. But just start doing it. The more that you do something, the more confident you're going to be at. And like I said, everybody starts off sucking at something. I was not, the best writer in the world when I was like 15, right? But I like decided at a certain point that I wanted to be a really good writer, and I kept working at it, right? I had like a decent natural aptitude for writing, and then I kept applying myself. I kept reading more, I kept writing more, I kept asking for people to tell me what they thought of my writing, whether it was my parents, my friends, teachers, tutors. I was really about writing and writing well. And so that's one of the reasons why like writing is a thing that I'm good at, is because I've dedicated a lot of time to it. You're never going to become good at something by not doing it. That's just not how it works. And I don't want it to sound super harsh, like I'm saying like, hey, you're like lazy or something. But like, it's super important to realize that the only way you're going to become very good at something is if you dedicate the time to doing it. And that means actually just like dealing with the sucking at it aspect. That's like your best way of knowing how to become a better commentator, and feeling like you have the ability to talk, and that's just going to come from being uncomfortable and working at it. Another thing to maybe keep in mind is like working with somebody who like commentates that you think could bring you more out of your show, right? So like if you have a local scene and they have commentators, maybe like strike up conversations with them and see like who you might have a better flow with, and be like, hey, I really want to become a commentator, and I think that working with you might bring me more out of my shell, and I want to be better. So like, could you do this with me so I can get those reps in? Because talking for a living is not like a natural thing. So I understand where you're coming from, that once it's time for you to actually talk, you just sort of blank. And so that's sort of a follow-up to your statement. All right. So because we're doing this Trans Lifeline thing, we are going to answer, and by we, I mean me. I don't know why I'm talking like I'm two people. I'm going to answer some of these questions that I got on Twitter a while back about being trans, and like things that people have wanted to ask trans people, but sometimes maybe you shouldn't ask those questions. None of these were like super aggressive, so it's fine. But yeah, so let's try to do this. Also, if you have any questions in chat that you've ever wanted to ask a trans person, or if you have questions about magic or content creation or commentary, even though I'm not a commentator, but I have some thoughts, go ahead and oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I hate streaming. I'm pretty terrible at it. But I'm doing it because, like I said, I really want to raise money for Trans Lifeline. And by the way, Chizopath, thank you so much for that $10. We are now $85 of our $250 goal. Thanks so much. I'm hoping that puts me on pace to get to where I want to be by the end of the month, right? If we're a week-ish in and I'm already close to halfway there, I'm pretty sure that with the other 3 weeks left in the month, we'll get there. But let's get to one of the first questions, which is actually from Princess Slim. And this was from a while ago, and I've been meaning to talk to Slim about it. But the question is, when did I know I was trans? So I have like a weird-ish coming out story. in the sense, well, I shouldn't say this is my coming out story. My trans realization story, which is that, one, some of y'all should realize that I'm not as young as you may think I am. I'm 31. I'm going on 32. I understand that that's not old, but that's super old in esport years. One of the things to keep in mind is that our understanding of transness is light years different now than it was when I was a kid, right? When I was a kid, you didn't have Google, so you had Ask Jeeves as your search engine, and that was pretty terrible. Yeah, so age is, real quick, sidebar to the story. Age in the FGC is very different than age in esports. So with the exception of like Call of Duty and StarCraft, like for League of Legends, the oldest age for a player is like 26. So like the FGC, Call of Duty, the FGC, CS:GO, and StarCraft are very different from the rest of esports. So that's just like a thing you have to realize. And I work predominantly in League of Legends and Overwatch outside of the FGC. Anyway, so all I knew back to knowing when I was trans. So I had no way of realizing that the ways that I felt about my body were very different than the way that other people felt about their body. What that means is that like I didn't know that like feeling that having a penis was weird and uncomfortable was not something that every guy thought about, right? And there was no way for me to like use the internet or even the library, right, as a means to talk about it. The internet wasn't even really a thing for most of my childhood. The internet didn't really become a thing until I was like in 6th grade, like 5th or 6th grade. So there was just like a huge like gap in my knowledge and understanding of like how the human body worked. And I also didn't have female siblings. And the reason I bring this up is that like I didn't know that bodies were different. Like I didn't know anything was like different between genitalia. So I didn't know that until like history class in like 5th grade. So I guess 5th grade is when I realized I was trans, and I didn't know that there was a word for that until high school. Yeah, high school. Like I knew what Hedwig and the Angry Inch was, and I like had seen Rent, but like that was cross-dressing, and that was also so in order, right? That was more being queer, and that was also, and then for Angel, that was just being a cross-dresser, right? Potentially being so like the only thing that I knew was that cross-dressing was the thing, and that it was usually something that gay men did, and or that you were a transvestite, which was the only trans word that I could find at the time. And that was more of like a sexual deviancy thing. And of course you don't want to be viewed as a sexual deviant at the age of like 12. So yeah, it wasn't until college, it wasn't until like late, it wasn't until I got to a creative arts camp called USDAN that my parents sent me to, because I kept talking about how interested I was in poetry, that I met my first openly gay friend, and I told him how I felt mentally, and he said that sounds like you're trans, like that you're a transsexual. And then I had a word, and now that I had a word, I was able to look things up with Ask Jeeves. But that was my super long-winded way of answering that question. What else do we have? Because I've got like another 30 minutes of talking to do. This is gonna be fun. All right, so one of my friends on Twitter, who has a private Twitter, so I'm not going to say their name, asked me, how did you know you were being true to yourself? Like, how did you make the final decision to be out? I struggle a lot with being bi. I'm starting to think it's really possible I'm 100% lesbian, but just very closeted, very afraid to identify as such because it kills dreams I had. Okay, so that's a super loaded question. So, I guess the question here is mainly what made me want to come out. So one of the things that we talk about, especially like as diversity trainers, something that I do, is that being queer isn't like you do this like one coming out, right? And then you're just out until the end of all time. And that often means that you come out over and over again. And as a non-cis passing trans person, I come out by stepping out the door, right? So that's just a thing that I want to bring up. That's number one. Number two, let's talk more generally, right? So when I first came out as with a queer identity, it was in high school. And I guess because I was empowered by reading The Perks of Being a Wallflower and just my brother being queer, that I felt like, what's the big deal? Like I'm attracted to boys and girls. So I came out as bi. And, you know, that did affect the way some people treated me, but, like, I never really dealt with any real, like, persecution. I wasn't really bullied for it. One, I went to a small school. Two, I've always been 5'9" and at least 200 plus pounds. And so, and one of the first things, one of my early experiences at my high school, because I went to a private school, so it wasn't like with people I grew up with, was getting into a fight with another kid about something completely having nothing to do with identity politics, and me, like, whooping his ass. So, like, it was, like, well established, both as me being one of the enforcers on the soccer field, and me having whooped somebody's ass, like, a month and a half into school, that, like, you just didn't fuck with me. So when I came out as bi in, like, sophomore year of high school, it wasn't really, like, a thing that I had to deal with, like, any sort of bigotry about directly to my face, because people knew I would whoop your ass. The benefit of being a large black person in a school predominantly white people is that it's pretty easy to be intimidating. Now, when it comes to coming out as trans, I did that in stages, and that was mainly because, like I said, even when I was in high school, I don't even think there was RuPaul's Drag Race. No, because we're on, like, season 10 of that shit, and so I think, like, RuPaul was, like, relatively, like, was, like, known, and, like, so people knew who RuPaul was, but RuPaul's a drag queen and not a trans person, so there was a lot of thoughts that people had about trans people that I was really afraid of being associated with. So I, like, came out in stages to people. Like, I came out to a couple of female friends. I think the only male friend I came out to was a male friend that I had from a summer camp that I had stayed in touch with, because I knew I wouldn't have to interact with him on the daily, right? So I knew that, like, the reject, because I knew from experiences of being a queer male-bodied person that women were a little bit more accepting. So that I knew that it was, like, okay to come out to to female identified people. So I came out to a couple of friends in high school, and then I knew that when I got to college that I was just gonna come out. Like, that was always the plan. I knew that once I wasn't living at home anymore, that I was just gonna come out, because I'm out about a lot of things about me. You know, I've never been, like, a closet nerd. My nerdiness, like, I wear it on my sleeves. Like, quite literally, my two wrist tattoos, right? My Hero Aka tattoo, which is also my semicolon tattoo. I have another tattoo on my wrist. I have this tattoo. I have this tattoo. So my 4 tattoos that are on my arms are all from geekdom. So, like, I've never been someone who's been, like, quiet about who they are when it comes to, like, anything, right? You know, when people would call me black, I would point out that, you know, I'm biracial. So I've just never been a quiet person about who I am, and being trans was not a thing that I wanted to be quiet about, but I also didn't want to have to deal with my parents yet. So when I got to college, I waited a bit, and then I bought some of my first girls' clothes from Walmart, and I just kind of came out. And I dealt with an immense amount of bullying, people writing things on my whiteboard, awkward interactions with my suite mates, and it didn't drive me into the closet, but it did make it a little bit harder. And it also like changed the way that I viewed being out. Um, when eventually, did some moving around. When I got to SUNY Albany, that's when I was like very adamant about being out as a trans person. What that means is that when I first came out at my first university, everyone had known me as Christopher, and I decided to. I came out and I told everybody that my name is Kimberly because I wanted to originally keep my first initial. I wanted to keep my initials, and also because Kimberly is a badass Power Ranger. I ended up not keeping that name because my coming out experience was so intensely negative that I just wanted to disassociate from it so hard that I stopped using Christopher. And because my first university was so negative about dealing with it, because they didn't have any gender or sexuality non-discrimination policies, I was like, well, they wanted me to stay. They're like, well, if you stay and you keep coming to us about this problem, it'll force us to have to make decisions. And at the time, I'm a freshman in college. The last thing that I want to do, right, is on top of learning how to college and learning, like, your first real steps in adulthood, is like also having to like be the champion for LGBT rights at my university. That just was like a little bit too much for the old version of me back when I was like 18. By the time I got to my next university, though, I was like, nope. The only people who know that my name are Christopher, anybody that gets to see my name because of like housing, and I'm going to be Alexandra. So, and I picked Alexandra because by the time I got to my next university, I'd realized that being outspoken about who I am and my needs and my desires and like being treated with respect, and also other people like me being treated with respect, was like a very important thing to me. And so I picked Alexandra because it was a name that means defender of all people, because it comes from Alexander. It's just how name meanings work. It's weird. Trying to make sure I get to all this. But yeah, so I guess my really shitty experience at my first college is what drove me to be like super out. But there was no, I'm really weird, or I guess I should say weird. I don't really have like a great advice for coming out because being out has just always been a big part of my personality. I've just always been a loud, flamboyant person. And usually the fact that people have heard two other names and neither of them are Amanda, a question that I get asked is, how did I settle on Amanda? So I will segue into that before I get to another question, which is when I was first out as Alexandra, I told people you can call me Alexandra or you can call me Lexi. You cannot, I really don't like being called Alex. Hey, what's up? So what I did is I would still get called Alex. People just would just flat out refuse to call me Alexandra or Lexi. And I would also still get heat a lot. And so I had to take summer courses at some point because I needed to boost my GPA because I was on academic probation. And so I said, you know what? No one is going to know me at summer courses. None of my friends are going to be on campus, really. I'm not going to see my usual professors. This is the perfect time to do a social experiment. So I picked another A name, which in this case was Amanda, and I said, you know what? Let's pick a name that doesn't really have a male equivalent without making like a huge leap, right? So like some people have said to me, well, like, oh, like Adam is like the male Amanda. I don't necessarily agree with that, but it would still be such like a huge like leap. You would be doing it just to do it at that point. And it would make you just blatantly a bigot. So I told people my name was Amanda and I wanted to see what would happen. So a lot of people didn't mispronoun me at first when I used Amanda. I mean, I still get mispronoun now, but like the proof was in the pudding, so to speak, at the time when I said that, when I wanted to see if people would misgender me to my face less if my name was Amanda. and also I would have a name that wouldn't be masculinized. And yes, I understand that there are female Alexes out there, but it's a very different experience for a trans person, specifically myself, when someone calls you a more traditionally masculine name when you identify as female, right? Now, that's not to say that, like, you should never call, like a cis female or, anyone who identifies as female, that you shouldn't call them Alex. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying specifically for me, in my experience, that being called Alex when you want to be called Alexandra or Lexi is a very different experience, and it almost feels like a very aggressive form of... It's like when people aggressively choose to misgender me, right? It's like a tool that I was giving them to deny my womanhood. Cool. We did that. So we have another question, which is, what are the... So this came from Arlea Cook at soccer_law4, and she asks, what are the subtle, everyday ways that I can support, help, or just not be a pain? How do I adequately educate myself? Are there non-obvious things I shouldn't say or ask? Okay, so what are the subtle ways to support trans people? One, you could donate to this really cool thing called Trans Lifeline. Just exclamation. Oh man, I fucked up my subtle segue. You can donate there, but like on a relatively more serious note, don't be a dick. Don't make assumptions. The best way to educate yourself is to do research, right? We all went to school. We all know how to... We Google the dumbest shit. Always, right? Some of us Google to see if Joe Pesci is still alive. Some of us Google to see if Danny DeVito has been in a movie in the last decade. You could Google for articles about trans experiences. The more familiar you are with experiences of trans people, the more tolerant you'll be, right? Like, one of the reasons why we talk about having, multi-ethnic, why multi-ethnic classrooms make people smarter, is we realize that having other people's experiences enriches our own experiences. And so the more people that you surround yourself that aren't like you, the more empathetic you are. So the more that you surround yourself with trans people, and not in like a fetishy way, but like if you're like, hey, you know what, there's like this queer social thing that I can go to, and there are trans people there, and I can become friends with trans people, or maybe they don't want to be your friend, but like be around other trans people will enrich your experience. Also, like I said, reading about trans people experiences, being intelligent about trans experiences, doing those research, that's super important. Also, don't vote for Republicans. I'm not kidding. Don't vote for Republicans. The Republicans have an extremely horrendously bad track record of blatantly doing things against the best interests of trans people. Especially in our current political climate with Trump being a president, and I'm going to be speaking mostly from a North American United States citizen perspective. When you elect a president whose party doesn't call him out for anything and doesn't stop him from doing things that are just against against the well-being of trans people, then you can't ever make an argument to me that there's some good Republicans. And that's not to say that like at like the political identity level that there aren't good Republicans, but like at the national level that just doesn't, I just don't believe that that's a thing that exists. That's, with the military ban, that's with Betsy DeVos repealing trans student protections at the high school academic level. That's with appointing a Supreme Court justice that's probably going to vote against the interest of trans and queer people in the workplace. Yeah. That's that. I don't really want to talk about this too much because I'm going to get a little heated, and I want to keep this a relatively positive stream. So I guess my answer is educate yourself. Read as many articles as you can. Read stories about trans people. Read stories about trans people's experiences, and keep an open mind. And communicate with trans people. Get to know actual, real life trans people. That's the best way that you can be a better ally. Oh boy. So I debated talking about this question, but I did say ask me anything that you've ever wanted to ask a trans person, that there would be no judgment. So Kanata, otherwise known as @Flutterpen on Twitter, asked me, and it's 2 tweets, so it's gonna be a while for me to read this. I've asked other trans friends this, but I consider you a good friend as well, so I'd like to also ask you, what are your thoughts on getting the full sex change surgery? Because to me, it seems like such a painful and even risky thing to get done at the current moment. It seems like the medical tech isn't there yet to really make it a fully safe and less harsh surgery. I know a friend that went through it, and they've had a hard time dealing with it since. It seems safer to wait until the medical field has advanced more in the area to get it done. Alright. So, first things first. And like I said, I invited this type of question to myself, so I'm not going to be too harsh about it. Gender confirmation surgery, which is the current most politically correct way to talk about bottom surgery for a trans person, is a very personal decision, right? So it is not something that many people are going to want to talk about, because there's a lot of personal things that goes into talking about your genitalia. Just like anybody, right? Like, cis people in the chat, you probably don't openly talk about how your genitalia feel that day. So like, let's think of it that way. That's 1. 2, personally for me, I have very complicated feelings about my genital region. I do experience dysphoria, but my dysphoria is usually through the lens of talking with other people, and the way other people treat me, and is not always tied to how I personally feel about my own body. So that's a thing that is, a very strong distinction. Dysphoria doesn't necessarily always have to be physical body dysphoria. It can be that is internalized. Sometimes dysphoria is an external feeling that you have because of interactions that you've had. So for me, because for a very long time my income level was at a point, and my insurance level was at a point, where medical transitioning was not a thing that I would be able to do, or that I thought I would be able to do, I did a lot of stuff to come at peace with the body I had, because I'm a firm believer that you should, or I've recently become a firm believer in, you should love the body you have while you try to make it the body you want. Whether that's in weight loss, whether that's as a trans person, whatever. You should love the body you have until you have the body you want. And for me personally, that meant, coming to terms with the fact that I have a penis, and that I need to accept that, and that I need to find a way to be at peace with that. As a fairly sex-positive person, I also like erotic pleasure, and that means that, I enjoy interacting with my body with other people. And so that is just that's sort of that, right? So why do I still want bottom surgery then, right? And so the answer to that would be is that I physically don't want to have a penis. My whole root of my transness was my general discomfort with having a penis. It has evolved into, I just have never really felt like I've had a lot of masculine energy. I've always felt more feminine in nature, and physically, the body that I want to have is a body that has a vagina. And I understand that, genitalia has nothing to do with gender. But for me personally, genitalia is at root a definition of my gender, right? So the further question then becomes, what about medical science? I will say, and I have no idea what physician, I have no idea what surgeon your friend saw. I have no idea if there were any complications. I have no idea if they followed I don't know anything about your personal friend's experience. I will say, however, that while the full medical science isn't, peak, right? Like, I'm not going to have ovaries and a uterus, right? I'm not going to have, there's chances that I'm not going to have the same sensitivity with my vagina as, a cis female is going to have, right? You can shore up a lot of the potential problems by seeing the best physical surgeon that you can, right? And that's true of anything, right? Like, you could have a lot of complications after having open heart surgery if, you potentially didn't see the best open heart surgeon in the world, right? Let's be honest, right? This isn't like surgery is only as good as the person performing it. Just like, I don't know, getting your car repaired. Your car is probably only going to be as repaired as well as the mechanic is going to be. That in mind, I'm going to speak a little bit more generally and say that dysphoria is a really fucked up thing. And that, similar to like all other forms of mental health, dysphoria can be crippling. There have been days, especially when I was first coming out, where I didn't want to leave the bed because I was feeling dysphoric. That I seriously had suicidal ideation. Well, I still have it for different reasons, but like there were days where I thought it would be better to be dead than to have a male body, right? To have a penis. And so, even if my vagina is not as functional as a factory model, I'm going to do what I can to lessen that dysphoria. And if there are problems that come from me having that vagina, I will tackle them when they arise. But like, dysphoria is not this like the thing that I need to stress is that dysphoria is not like feeling sad because you're not happy about your body, right? That's not what it is. It's like, it is often physically painful for me how mentally upset I am with my own body. It's not as simple as like having a bad hair day, right? And I think that that's something that cis people who do not identify as trans, who identify with the physical sex that they have and the gender assigned to them at birth, just cannot comprehend how very different dysphoria and like being unhappy with your body is. Those are two completely different things, and the only people that I think have any sort of understanding who are not trans are people that suffer from body dysmorphia, people who have like eating disorders, right? I think that because there's some similarities to it, they're the only people that can truly understand the difference between like not liking your body and mentally having such a painful disconnect with it. So yeah, that's my answer to that question. I'm not out of questions. We got more. Let's do a more fun one because that was a little heavy. So D, who I don't know is in the chat, but good friend of mine, asked, what are some mainstream stories, pop culture yarn that read as trans fables or stories regardless of authorial intent? Example, I've seen Tonks from Harry Potter read as both queer and trans prior to Rowling shoving her into a chemistry-free relationship with a man. That's actually a really good question. I don't know, every shapeshifter question I code as trans. But that's because like I feel like if I had the ability to shapeshift, I would definitely spend time as either gender, even if I wasn't trans. I've been reading a lot about Spider-Man being coded as trans because like he's always because he's like, I'm Spider-Man, I'm not like Spider-Boy. So that there's like this whole headcanon that like that Peter Parker in the MCU is a trans male, and that's why he doesn't like being called Spider-Boy. So I'm super down for that one. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else that I've like mentally coded as trans who wasn't explicitly trans. I'm one of these nerds that like I'm not really a big fan of headcanons or shipping. So this is sort of super outside of my realm. It's just like a personal thing. I'm one of those like, well, actually nerds. But I promise I'm not like aggressive about it. But yeah. So I just don't necessarily have I don't headcanon a lot of things, but I wouldn't be surprised if like any shapeshifter character was trans. 1 second, I have to take a drink. I have not played Celeste. I've watched speedruns of it, and I think it's a dope looking, beautiful game with amazing music. It's got a really great soundtrack, but I've never physically played it. And when I've watched speedruns, because it's a speedrun, you're not getting a lot of the story out of it, unless like the runner themselves is telling you a lot of the story. And so yeah, I don't know a ton about Celeste's story. But yeah, so that's not a question that I really have like an answer for. But I will say, yeah. However, so the thing with that, Lewis, is that Martians do have genders. A manhunter is basically a cop for the Martians. Man, this is my nerd hat. But Jahan Jones is actually male. Like categorically is male. But sex works a little bit differently when your whole species can shapeshift, I assume. But categorically, he is a male. Like he's always been written as male. He had a wife. It's been referred to him having gendered children. So I don't really buy into the whole Martians are non-binary thing. But like I said, I'm also a actually nerd. So I don't. I really try not to go against like the way a character is written. When characters come out in comics, then I talk about like queer coding and like ways that you can sort of look at the character's history to see aspects of their gender or sexuality. So in the case of like Beast and the old conflict of feels right versus well actually. Yeah, no, I agree there. She's a Path, thanks for coming through. Thanks for listening. Thanks for asking questions, and thanks for supporting. So yeah, Lewis. So like my thing is that like if a character comes out, right? So let's use Beast because that was like that was like one of the first characters that was like definitively written as like male and chauvinistic, and they always drew him with like a bunch of like he was like a playboy, right? Especially even after the mutation that made him into a furry, right? So when they had him come out as gay, you can then like go back and look at interactions he's had with like Wonder Man and like other things, and you could like say like, all right, cool, like here's some queer coding here. Even if the author didn't intend for him to be queer, you can now look at him with a queer lens. I have no problem doing that. I just personally don't. I'm not one of those nerds that really does the whole like headcanon or feels right, with the exception of Steven Universe, and that's because Rebecca Sugar has said that all of the gems are not women. They're technically non-binary, but they're all written and coded as female, right? So that's a whole different thing for me. Cool. Do I have any more questions? Oh, this is from Chase Wasnier. I should see if Chase is in. I don't think Chase is in the chat, but I'm going to let Chase know that I'm answering his question on stream. Chase. I am answering your trans question on stream now. Alright, so he might not show up in time, but I wanted to give him the heads up that we were answering this question. And then I'm going to open questions to people in the chat again, and then we're going to sign off because we've been streaming for an hour. And I got dental work done yesterday, so my jaw is still recovering. So I don't know how much longer I can comfortably talk, and I need this to be all working because I'm going to be in Houston and talking for like 10 hours on Saturday. What's the most effective way you found in explaining transgender and other LGBTQ terms to older generations? My Grammy wants to be respectful, but she tends to feel overwhelmed by the sheer scope of LGBT issues and a lack of any meaningful education on the topics. So, I'll say this, and this is like a thing that comes up, especially when talking to when talking to older people. Usually they knew somebody like X, but there wasn't a word for it. You have to remember that, like, with time we have better definitions of we create terms, right, for things. So I think your best bet is honestly to use resources. One of the things that I've learned, especially as someone who this is going to be a really interesting segue, but or I guess analogy, but like as somebody who plays Magic, right? People think that they could teach someone how to play Magic, but they actually tend to overcomplicate things, and they tend to go too in depth. So oftentimes the best way to explain things is with as minimal information as possible, and that doesn't always work with LGBT stuff. So one of my biggest suggestions is to use resources developed by PFLAG, Parents for Lesbian. Is that what it stands for? Man, it's been so long. PFLAG. Yeah, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. They put out a lot of really good literature on how to talk about LGBT topics, and so I think that that's one of the best ways to talk about LGBT stuff with older people is by looking at literature designed for that and adopting it. Me personally, things that work for me aren't going to necessarily work for you because as an educator, one of the things that I'm pretty good at is talking to a person to figure out how the best way they learn and then adapting the information that I want to give them to that. So I don't necessarily want to give you a ton of like personal ways of describing things because I just like don't know anything about your grandma. She's probably like a really dope lady, especially if she's actively trying, but she just is overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information. I also would really recommend Katie Couric's. Katie Couric did a like pretty okay documentary with Nat Geo. Gender Revolution. So it's on Netflix. You can also watch it on YouTube. So you can watch it on YouTube for free. You can also watch it on Facebook for free. You can also watch all of it on Nat Geo for free. So you don't need Netflix to watch it. But Katie Couric did this like pretty good low barrier of entry documentary on transness. And so it's pretty good, and I've heard from a lot of older people that because it's Katie Couric, and she doesn't really have, like, you can tell that she herself doesn't really have a large understanding of trans issues, that it's something that they were able to learn from. So I definitely recommend that. That is like my biggest recommendation to how to talk about queerness and transness is watch Gender Revolution by Katie Couric. What's up, Lewis? We got my daughter a book called It Feels Good to Be Yourself. It doesn't explain too much, but I think it gives a good talking points to ask questions about. Yeah, that's also a really good book. There's, Princess Boy. There's Julian Wants to Be a Mermaid. There's a lot of really good books. Talking about it with kids is surprisingly not that difficult, because as long as like you're an open person, your child doesn't receive too much gender biasing, especially because like kids television this day is like not as gender biased as it was for us when we were kids. So that like drastically has affected kids' understanding of like transness and queerness, because even though those things aren't necessarily spoken about in those shows, things aren't super hard coded like they used to be. So it's 8:05. We've got a few people still in chat. So what I would like to do is ask you guys if you have any questions that you want to ask me. And if not, we gonna call it a night. But yeah, you can ask me anything. It doesn't have to be about trans stuff. You can ask me about esports. You can ask me about video games. You can ask me about anime. Whatever you want to ask me about, ask me. And we're gonna aim to wrap up the stream at like 8:15, 8:30. Yo, so you know what? I mean, I like almost never talk to Jason anymore, and I talk to Sean like I think like once every 2 months, and then I talk to you when you show up in my Twitch chat and when I show up in your Twitch chat. But like, honestly, I would be super down to do Redcast Wins again, especially because like it's an old man perspective. Because like you play Arena, and I know you're like grinding the ranked ladder, and then like. I know Jason still plays I don't think he plays competitively anymore, but like from his tweets, I know that he's still like a cuber and plays Commander. And then like Sean works for Card Kingdoms, like obviously he still plays Magic. So like, I know Magic doesn't need more podcasts, but I would be down, honestly, to bring back Redcast Wins. I don't ever want to run a website again. I would never want to run. I think Magic's in a very different place than it was when we were making a Magic website. So I don't think that like it would even be a viable thing to like launch a Magic website at this point. But I would be 100% down to bring back the podcast in some form, whether it's like a stream like this where there's an overlay and there's the four of us or a combination of us. But yeah, I would seriously be down to clown again. I like miss talking to you guys as a group. I sometimes listen to our old episodes and they're a little cringy, but like I laugh. Like the jokes are still funny to me. The interactions are great. You and your call blade, and me being like the Timmy that I used to be. Like, man, it's so funny going down memory lane. But yeah, Redcast wins. Redcast definitely wins. Zelomorphic. What anime would I recommend? Oh no, this is a dangerous topic. So I will start here. This is my starting point. So I watch way too much anime. I also used to write anime reviews. This is a very dangerous combination. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this. So I don't use Anime List. I use Anime Planet because that is the site that was like the site that my friend was using at the time. So that's the site that I use. So Zelomorphic. That is almost, because I haven't updated it in like a couple of months, so it's missing some things. That is almost every anime I've ever watched ranked from 5 stars to 0. And I was polite enough to give it to you in rating order. But my actual answer is, here are the top 5 anime that I think everybody should watch. In no particular order. Kisniver. Kisniver is an anime about teens that have been genetically altered to share emotional and physical pain. Yeah, that's all I'm going to tell you about the plot. It's really is a great conversation about empathy and the bonds that people can make with each other. Love that show. I also really like Gashamen Crowds. It's not your mom and dad's Gotcha Men, I'll tell you that. It's a pretty good show. It's very different to it's visually different, but it's a fun watch. And as much as I really love my shonen and stuff, I don't always recommend a lot of shonen anime because they're not everybody's jam. But yeah, I'm a pretty big fan of Gotcha Men crowds. I don't think I gave it 5 stars, but it is like an anime that I always recommend. It's definitely up there as one of my favorites. Wandering Sun is another really good one. It's based on a manga about trans youth. That's sort of like the like simplest way. I have some problems with the manga towards the end, and I also have a little bit of issues with the anime from a story pacing standpoint because they start close to like the middle of the second arc of the manga, which still refers to things that happened before, and I think that the stuff that it doesn't fully address affects your understanding of the story. But the anime is really pretty. It's got this really interesting, unique watercolor art style. It's very wholesome. It's not about transness as like a butt of a joke, but like a very honest expression of like how these kids deal with gender. It's a very beautiful anime. And even though I have problems with the way that the manga ends, and it's not like a tragic ending, I just have some issues with the way that the manga ended, I would also deeply, deeply recommend reading the entire manga and watching all 11 episodes of the anime. Do you want like 5? Because I'll stop at 5. Kids on the Slope. Kids on the Slope is an anime about kids forming a jazz band in like the 1940s, 50s. Yeah, it's about kids making a jazz band, and it's a slice of life show. If you like Cowboy Bebop, it's the same director, which means you know that the music is really good. So it's a lesser known product of his, because it's not one of his original works. But yeah, it's phenomenal. I love the music. Story's great. We'll do this. Kisniver. So those are the 4 that I've recommended so far. And then my 5th anime, I almost feel like when I recommend it, it's like I'm recommending multiple shows. And it's called Joker Game. So Joker Game is about Japanese spies. Circa like like late 1930s, early 1940s. And it's a bunch of vignettes of these Japanese spies. Like I think most of them are single character focused episodes, and they're not all different from each other, but each vignette is like very well written. It's a very cool show. Stylistically, it's just different than a lot of the stuff I've watched. And yeah, so I like a thinking man's anime, and so that's why Joker Game is pretty up there for me. Those are the 2 questions in chat. Does anybody else have any questions before I pop off? We've got like 16 minutes before I decide to end the stream. Yeah, you're never going to get Super Shonen-y anime recommended for me. This is actually time to plug. Me and Enzo-sama are actually going to bring back something that we used to do. So way back in the day, me and Enzo-sama did a blog called Something Ambiguous where we wrote anime reviews. We're actually bringing it back as a podcast because Enzo wants to get back into streaming and I'm trying to stream. So our first episode is going to be, what, Enzo? The recovery of an MMO addict? Right? I think that's our first episode is going to be about that. Yeah, recovery of an MMO junkie is what we're going to do for our first episode. So we're going to stream it and then obviously put it out that way. So, have I watched Steven Universe? Yes, Real Dustbite. You missed it. I talked about Steven Universe. I love the show. I was late to the party, but I've since caught up. Not late to the party, like I just heard about it, but I was like late to the party for when it was airing, because I didn't have cable. But yeah, I'm a pretty big Steven Universe fan. I really enjoy it. I haven't watched the movie yet because I've just been really busy with work. But I plan on watching it very soon. Probably on my flight to Houston. Because I have like a 2-hour flight to Charlotte and then a 2-hour flight to Houston. So somewhere in that time frame I'll probably watch it. But yeah. Anybody else got questions? I mean, I have a backlog of AMA questions I should probably get to too. But like, I'm down to answer anything that the chat has. Got that Laffy Taffy. Yeah, I do feel that way. Do I have a favorite Miyazaki film? Before I answer that, I'm gonna say something that's become relatively less controversial, which is I'm not a big Miyazaki fan. It's basically Japanese Disney. We good. With that said, I think it's Princess Mononoke. And it might be because Princess Mononoke was the first one I watched and I still own it on VHS. But Princess Mononoke. Princess Mononoke is my favorite Miyazaki film. I will also say this. If you were to make me make a top 10 anime film list of all time, it wouldn't be on it. Just so you know. So yeah, not a huge Miyazaki person. It is a good one. My tastes have just developed since then. I don't even know if it's on my anime list, on my anime planet, and I also don't think it has a 5-star. That's probably incorrect that it doesn't have 5 stars, but it's definitely not like my favorite film. My top 10 also has 3 films from the same director. And if you could guess who that director is, it means that you probably actually follow me on Twitter, or that you know me in real life, or that you've heard one of my many rants about him. Can any of you guess who my favorite anime director is? No problem, Zella. Real Dustbite, good shit. Yeah, it's Satoshi Kon. Satoshi Kon is probably my favorite director of all time, which I feel like is cheating because I feel like animation directors have can do a lot more of their vision than you can being limited by what an actual camera can do. There's actually a really great film study on Satoshi Kon's editing style, which sort of... Is it this? Yeah. So, if you're a fan of Satoshi Kon, or a fan of anime, you should watch this. Not Paprika, but yes Paprika. But you should watch this. It's accidentally... I'm too lazy to fix this. It's going to start 3 seconds into the video. But you should watch this. But yeah, it's Satoshi Kon. My top... 3 of my, top 10 favorite anime movies of all time are Paprika, Tokyo Godfathers, and Perfect Blue. So, yeah. I have a real obsession. Zelomorphic, it's okay to be a new follower, a new viewer. Hopefully, I've been cool enough and you want to hit me with that follow button, because like I said, I'm going to be streaming all month, and at least until January. And then, depending on how the whole face surgery thing goes, because I'm getting a bunch of teeth removed and getting a partial denture, will determine how much I stream in January. But yeah, so Satoshi Kon, favorite. Definitely should check out that video. We got 10 more minutes, folks. Do I go to the backlog AMAs, or do we got more questions? Millennium Actress is really good, but it's not in my top 10. It's like in like my top 25. Schedule of upcoming appearances. So I'm going to be in Houston this weekend for Red Bull Conquest. I'm going to be in Seattle on the 9th for also Red Bull Conquest. I might be in Santa Monica in late November for the Red Bull Conquest Finals, but they haven't told me or Born Free if we're going to be there or not yet. So I'm not telling people I'm going to be there, because I'm definitely not going if I'm not being flown out. And that's just, it's not even a financial thing. I've been traveling a lot lately. I'm going to PAX Unplugged for a vacation. So don't expect any content outside of maybe I'll film a vlog, or I might like film like some Commander gameplay, but I'm not treating it as a content trip. I desperately need a vacation. And I'm financially in a place where I can do one. So, yeah. Vacation. It's like a thing that needs to happen. And then I might be going to Commander Fest DC, because I think that's like the weekend after PAX Unplugged. And again, vacation. I just want to like go and play Commander and like board games and have fun with people. And I desperately need that in my life. And fuck it. I've worked really hard lately, and yeah, I like seriously need a vacation. So we out there, we're gonna be trying to do that. Yeah, Zelomorphic, I feel you. Like I really do. I in fairness, like I've financially not been in a place probably for the last like 8 years that I could reasonably take a vacation. So it was never about like, oh man, I don't need one. It was literally like I just like could not, I just could not do it before. Just like fiscally was impossible. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like, I know that some people, even if they like have the funds, they don't take it. That was never really it for me. I financially just didn't have the ability to do so. So I'm now fiscally, I am now in a place where I can, and so I really want to afford myself that opportunity to do this like nice thing for myself. Also, Real Dustbite, thank you for the follow. We got a bunch of other follows today. I don't know why Streamlabs hates me. Real Dustbite, Professor High Kick, Ted Lucky, Cute Vermouth, the Meme Reviews, and Kooky Persona. Thank you all for the follows. Yeah, Streamlabs hates me. I'm sorry, guys, that I missed your follows. It's not because I don't love you. I swear. Yeah, Chase, I see you in the chat now. You missed. I don't know if you caught me, but I might put the full stream VOD up on my YouTube, since this is an AMA. But I'm also going to be throughout the day doing micro videos on coming out day, answering some of the questions that people have asked me about being trans. I'm also going to be soliciting more. So Chase, you will be able to see it, whether it's by watching the Twitch VOD, watching the VOD on YouTube, or it will definitely be one of the ones I do tomorrow on Twitter too. So yeah. Thanks for saying I'm amazing. I don't know if I am. I mean, I'm kind of dope, I guess. So thanks. But yeah, we got 6 minutes. So if you guys have any other questions that you want to ask, please hit me up. If you can afford $1 for Trans Lifeline, please afford $1 for Trans Lifeline. They do amazing stuff. I'm going to be speaking at this gala thing that they're doing on Tuesday in the city. So yeah, just please support them. Like I said, we are at $85 of my $250 goal. I would love, I'm not saying that we have to hit 100 tonight, but by, Sunday I'm hoping to hit 100 because that connects 4 people to the hotline. It's the only trans-centric crisis lifeline in the United States and Canada. So yeah. Or if we raise $250, we have paid for one trans person's document update. So that's what we're trying to do. We're either trying to get to the 250 so that, they can give out another micro grant, or, each 25 that we raise is helping somebody in need, which I think is a pretty dope thing. So if you have it in you, if you got a spare $1, it doesn't have to be a lot. Every donation matters. There's none too small. Just don't donate to me. Don't donate directly to my bank account. I don't need it. Oh man. You never get a bunch of cavities taken care of in the same day, folks. Talking is hard. You know what? I'm surprised, Lewis, you didn't ask me some, more trolly magic related question. Oh man, I actually have 2 moderators in the chat for once? Yo, I'm a real streamer girl. Oh wait, no, I didn't put on my makeup and I'm not wearing my push-up bra today. But I'm a real streamer, guys. I got mods and a chat. Alright, we're going to answer one of the backlog questions to round off the night, if I could find my notepad. This is not usually where I stream from. You see that light in the back? That thing? I usually stream over here, so all of my stuff is set up here. I just didn't feel like moving my laptop today. Alright. Oh wait, Lewis, type in the chat if you're still here. Type in the chat now. Because you asked me a question a while back for my AMA, and then I never released it. But type in the chat. Oh, I remember what the AMA was for. It was to get to $500 on Patreon. We were there for a little bit. We're not there anymore. But yeah, Lewis, if you're still in chat, you should hit me up because I have your questions. So. But because I haven't heard from you, I'm going to assume that you're not in chat. Alright, so we're going to answer a question. I don't remember who it's from. But the last question I'm going to do is, what is my favorite interview I've ever done? For those of you who are new here, who don't know who I am, I have spent the last 4 to 5 years working as a interviewer in the esports space. Predominantly working within League of Legends, fighting games, and the Overwatch community. Overwatch is, if we did bulk interviews, it would be League of Legends, fighting games, and then Overwatch. I'm also probably not going to be doing any more Overwatch content with the stuff going on in Blizzard, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, so I have 2. It's really hard for me to separate these 3, and unsurprisingly, they're one for each of the games I've covered. My first sort of favorite interview I've ever done is I interviewed Bishu, and we talked about both being people who have ulcerative colitis as an illness because Bishu missed missed a large portion. Actually, I think missed all of stage 1, and I think part of stage 2 because of flare-ups he was having from his ulcerative colitis. But at the time, he and the LA Gladiators had made an announcement that he was going to be missing week 1 of stage 2 because week 1 of stage 1 for season 2 of the Overwatch League, because he was having flare-ups. And I was flying, my patrons had gotten me to a goal that had made it possible for me to go to Overwatch League for the opening week. And so, as someone who's had ulcerative colitis and has been a fan of Bishu from back in his League of Legends days, I was like really excited I really wanted to talk to him about this because I knew that unlike other people who might want to talk about it with him, I have personal experience and nuance to draw from it. So that was a really great interview. And one of the best feelings after doing that interview was so many people, both on Reddit, Twitter, people, just like all I kept hearing from people who had read that interview was, wow, I didn't know how tough it was to have a chronic illness. But I also had so many people come to me and be like, this was great because I've never seen anybody talk about having an illness publicly like this. I have ulcerative colitis, and it's cool to know that there's this person doing something like being a professional gamer and having this illness. So that meant a lot to me, that it meant a lot to all people, because that's what I was hoping for. I go into every interview with an expected outcome, and I'm hoping that I'm right, that I'm doing this interview for a certain person. And the people I wanted to do this interview for were for people who had an illness like we did. And it meant a lot to those people, and it's one of my best performing interviews content-wise. And to this day, like, I still get kind of choked up thinking about what people told me from reading the interview. I don't care about how well it did. Like, if 5 people read an interview, but those 5 people love it, that means more to me than hearing that like 20,000 people read an interview and I've never heard anything about it. 2. Next favorite interview is I did a interview with Broxa at Rift Rivals this year, talking about mental health. He got really emotional during the spring split because Fnatic was doing extremely poorly at the start of the split, and he actually cried on stream. He actually cried on stream because he was saying that, there's no way that a team that makes it to the World's Finals is just suddenly awful, right? And we talked about that. We talked about burnout, and it was amazing to talk to somebody about mental health and about burnout, which are things that we don't usually talk about in esports, and him be very open and honest about like how he should tackle it and what, and like, yeah, it was an experience that I've only ever gotten to have a second time, and that was talking to Blippo about it as well, because Blippo has also been very open about talking about his mental health. So yeah, that was a really cool experience for me that I don't think I'm going to... I don't know how often I'll get to have it doing interviews in the future, just because I don't know if everybody's going to be as honest and about it. And then my last favorite interview, and what I'll be closing the stream with, is my interview with Bonchan after he won EVO this year. Previously, before that, it was my interview with Bonchan the year before, at EVO 2018, where we talked about like travel and the backlash he got from Capcom for speaking his mind. Now it's the interview after him winning EVO, because it was a culmination of like 2.5 years of doing interviews with Bonchan. And so I don't know how much of it's the interview itself and how much of it is the lore. So that was one of the cooler experiences for me, because someone who I've been interviewing both through the ups and downs, because even though Bonchan has never been bad, right? Like, makes the Capcom Cup. He's always like it's not like he squeaks in. He's always like in the top like 12, 15 of the 32 people, of the 31 people that qualify. Well, I guess technically 26 people that qualify. Yeah, 26 people that qualify. He definitely hasn't always been a favorite to win any event. He's just a guy that will probably always top 8 or top 16. And from interviewing him as the last Nash all the way through, getting to play Sagat again has just been a pleasure. And so getting to culminate that with his win at EVO this year was pretty great. But yeah, those are my top 3 interviews I've ever done. I know it was 1, but those are my top 3 favorite interviews I've ever done. Thank you, everybody, for coming through this stream. I'm going to try to do these what's today, Thursday? Yeah, so every Thursday I'm going to be doing AMA streams. They'll either be, just chatting is probably the better phrase for them, where I'll be coming through and we'll be talking about anime or magic, or I'll be giving journalism lessons, or I'll be giving content creator advice, or we might talk about just like hot topics in video games. And if there's like a big tournament coming up that weekend for like FGC, I'll probably like talk about my predictions and stuff for that. But yeah, that's what the Thursday is going to be like. I should have my schedule in my Twitch chat, in my Twitch panels, but I don't. So I will link you to a tweet that has my Twitch schedule in it. There you go. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. One more time. I mean, I know it just went out, but one more time, consider donating. Until next time. Oh, yeah. Let me be super honest about something. Sunday stream might not happen. Just because I'm going to still be in Houston, and I don't know what my internet's going to be like at the hotel. We might just do like a quick stream about how I feel about how Red Bull Conquest went. But yeah, that's a thing for me to be completely honest about. Sunday stream might not happen. Monday stream of the neutral will happen. It's going to be with me and Alex Lee. Alex Lee was taken. Yeah. It's going to be with Alex Lee, who is a Smash content creator / journalist. We're going to be talking about the sort of financial discussion that's been happening in the Smash community lately. So that's going to be at 7 p.m. EST, 4 p.m. PST. You can do the math from there. Thank you so much again. Until next time, go beyond, plus ultra, and peace.